Right, this is welcome to the last one of the day. So you've had a busy old day, I'm sure. You're all buzzing and knackered, so I'll try and keep it reasonably succinct. I run a Marxist-capitalist business, which I'll explain a little bit more about when in the 2 lots of 10 minutes I've got to speak. We're all amongst friends, and so I'm going to just share some of the kind of inside track on how we create a very different culture, very different business. And funnily enough, Cook, one of our larger clients, put together because of our ethics. I'd never heard of Cook. I'm from the north. They're not up north. Well, I'm not from the bit of north I come from. And so all of a sudden I got introduced to Ed, Rosie's bro. And we hit it off, and as I say, the rest of it, because you've got alignment, all of a sudden things happen. And they are exactly what Rosie were talking about. They're a really nice company that fueled on really good values, and there's a lot of companies out there, but they don't usually kind of talk about them too much, which is silly, because that's the kind of thing that resonates with people. The reason I make a big thing about coming from Yorkshire is it gives me a comparative advantage against anybody who is from the south. And the reason for that is really kind of simple. In a world where people have to work together to get maximum commercial value, it's run on trust. The beauty of coming from Yorkshire is I trust everybody on the first meeting. I don't wait to test their trustworthiness. From day one, I will trust them, and thereafter, they will either be trustworthy or not. So immediately, I've got a bigger network of people who I trust, and with reciprocity, people trust you back. Now, if somebody's going to screw you over, they're going to do it sooner or later anyway. So I just cut out all the kind of pre-work that you do to get to the bottom of who's trustworthy. And luckily, 90% of people are. So it gives me an opportunity to share stuff. And, you know, as they say, the more you, well, I've put it in here, the more you give, the more you get. So the more you give with absolutely zero expectation of anything back in return, and that's critical, then the more people will share with you what they're thinking. And if you're very clear of what you're about, you find the right kind of people will spend a lot of time helping you. And it really, in a world where there is infinite amount of competition, I think the more one of the key comparative advantages every business has these days is that you have to be able to out-collaborate people, not out-compete. And so our entire business is about creating value for everybody throughout the supply chain, clients and suppliers alike. And it's all built on trust, because trust is the most efficient way of working ever. There is no better way. There's no faster way, there's no more efficient way for you to run any organisation than through trust. So you do everything to promote it, and that equals transparency, and you make sure that you do what you say on the tin, because otherwise people won't trust you, and who'd have believed it, you're at a comparative disadvantage. So that's why, being from Barnsley, which is a very straightforward part of Yorkshire even, it's not like Harrogate, like some people in this room, even though it sounds like a mank. And so what I'd like to do is save you immediately £25,000. I went to Harvard to do an innovation course, which was interesting. But the only thing I got out of that, other than common bleeding sense, was that if you want to go into a creative meeting to get insight, you've got to go in with your mind open. Go out, suspend your preconceived ideas of what the outcome of that meeting is going to be, because otherwise all you do is have a straight line of sight. You go in knowing what you're going to be saying. So you spend every kind of bit of interaction trying to make sure that what you thought was going to happen happens. So you're very narrow focused. So if you're looking at creating unique value, it's rarely where everyone else is going. And so the oxymoron of Marxism and capitalism working together is something that does take a little bit of getting your head around. But actually, if you open your mind and just have a look at it, you'll find that actually it works with everybody, for everybody, gives everybody an opportunity to be the best version that they can be of themselves. And that's what I'm going to kind of share with you today. I was brought up and went to university in the time of the miners' strike. For those of you, many will remember it, many were too young to remember it. It's where the Thatcher government decided to crush the unions and shut down all the coal fields. 30 years on from this, Barnsley is just about getting to the GDP of it was back in 1984. I mean, it's multi-generational or unemployment, huge amounts of drug problems and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, what it did is make you open your mind to the kind of fact that many things in life, you've got a choice of what you do with it. Power, money. And it actually opens your mind as well to other things that you see out in the big wide world that we kind of take for granted. It's just the way it is. And it doesn't have to be. But things like creating value unequally and having an increasing amount of inequality in the world. I mean, if you look at the FTSE 200, I think at the time of Thatcher, the multiple was 25 times the earnings for a CEO of top 100 FTSE, 25 times their base salary of the average worker. It's now 300, the same metric. So even though we might feel everything's been democratised, so actually the inequality absolutely isn't. You've got vested interests running throughout it. The establishment are these insecure overachievers who typically have gone to the kind of public schools where they have a rarefied view of the world and can't relate to anybody else. Hence, they bring their mates in. They recruit their mates and people of their ilk. So you get massive disenfranchising, and the pool of talent that you've got within the political process leads to I can't swear, but I won't do. I'm trying to get better at swearing. The arseholes, which is about the best thing, that are in power now, who absolutely have got no idea what they are doing because they really cannot relate to the average person that's under their power. The fact that there's a lot of shortcuts for the environment. People will rape the environment to make the most of, to make more cash for no particular reason, and human exploitation. You know, you're all very enlightened people because otherwise you wouldn't be here. But many people who you work with alongside aren't like that and look for the lowest common denominator and everything else is a cost rather than a benefit in there. And this is the kind of world that we're living in, which is why we end up with the kind of world that we have. Who'd have believed it? You get idiots like that and decisions like that, which are hurting everybody, silly, all the way around. Because it's the only way that many people who have been disenfranchised, that have got little in the way of opportunity to rebel, can react. So it's entirely predictable. You know, it's like the North Korean leader, when it's a logical thing. He's far from mad. If you want to stay in power, the last thing you do is roll over. You make something which means you will stay in power, and he has. And therefore, he's got no chance of setting that bomb off, but he's doing it for those reasons. And if you understand the psyche of people, then you'll understand why those decisions are made. But the truth of the matter is, we've all been living a false lie, which is a bit of a shame. Because if you look at this is the global index of spending in the developed world. So you look at when you're young, you have little, I can't do it both sides. And then all of a sudden you spend more money and you end up with more stuff. And the global zenith of spending is 48. That's when you do it. And thereafter, you generally have the stuff that you want. You've got the house that you want, and all of that kind of stuff, and you gradually spend less. You downsize. You don't need all the chattels of life. There is also a corollary to this, which is the global index of happiness. Which is this, from The Economist. So if you look at that, you start very happy. Luckily, it's not. I used to think it was a slippery slope to death, but there is a U shape in here, so you do that, and then you get less happy as you have children and you get jobs with responsibilities that you need to. You feel that kind of burden coming down on you. You've got all of the stuff that you need to do, and then somewhere around about 50. You actually start to think, well, I am what I am. I'm happy with this. I know me. I don't actually need any more. So the weight comes off your shoulders. And unfortunately, in the post-Second World War capitalist society that we all live in, we've been sold a pup. because there is an inverse relationship between how much stuff you have and how happy you are. And we've all been sitting there working avidly to get more stuff, thinking that that makes us happier. And actually, it doesn't. Now, don't get me wrong, poverty isn't great, but having too much isn't great either. You don't see these people, they get paranoid, and you worry about people who are only after you for your money, and you've lost your link with community. Gerald Ratner, I do some speaking with him. For those of you who are old, will remember the guy was a complete arsehole in the 1980s, and he lost £1 billion of his own money by just saying that in the IOD conference that his product, which was jewellery, was shit. And as a consequence, he lost everything. And I was just having a chat with him. We were in Sweden, and he's a really nice bloke now. He lives in Cookham and cycles 50 miles a day with it, and takes his dog for a walk. And so he said the worst thing was when you've got all of that stuff, you're wrapped around people who only want to know you because of what you got rather than what you are. He had at that time 3 private jets and 2 private helicopters. He said, I didn't even know what season it was, let alone what day of the week it was. It was choreographed. And this is the bubble that these politicians, that these titans of business are in, and they get removed from the humanity of it because they've got this thing that more is better, and actually enough is better, rather than having forever. And if you look at nature, nothing in nature grows on forever, and we're part of nature. You work out what is your enough, and that's what typically happens. And so once you've got that awareness, all of a sudden, it kind of makes sense. And the people that you're trying to recruit into your business now, the younger people, the talent that you need in your business, they aren't going to have to go through this, because we were on this step ladder that we are, to get more and more and more and more, because we believe that was the thing. It was almost an expectation. Well, they're not there. So they know enough is a lot less than we had. So they don't have to have the burden. So they only want to work at a place they want to work. And this is where purpose, this is where having the kind of environment which you've been talking about today is really important, because you cannot outpay Google and people like that. No end. We had a guy that came with us, very bright guy, just for an internship, a Cambridge mathematician, nice bloke, and he was offered for the first job straight out of uni by Google, £100,000 a year. First off, straight grad trainee. And he didn't take it because he got offered more somewhere else. So just leave those ones. But you can outcompete them on other areas, quality of life type things. So these are the kind of things that you need to these are the important things now that to attract the talent into your business. So I thought, what shall I do? Instead of creating a revolution which is actually very destructive and not really that good, have an evolution, because we are in a continuum. If you understand history, you'll realise nothing is the same always. It evolves, it changes, it morphs. So I started up Webmart back in the day, and we've actually done all right. So we've been going 21 years now. We made a profit every year, never borrowed any money, rather like Rosie. And because that gives you the freedom. If you borrow money, it comes with rules. Those rules narrow your focus of what you can do. They give you timelines. They stop you being creative. So I decided one rule that I did do is never, ever borrow money. So you reinvest your own money so you can create the change that you wish to see within your organisation and run it the way that you want to do. It pays a lot more tax. We're very tax efficient for society. We're really, really dreadful if you want to look at individual gain, because it all goes through payroll. We don't do any cleverness, because that actually pays for the stuff that really does matter in the world, which is the kind of things like security, freedom, NHS, etc. So we have a very big tax yield. We pay people more than the average. We've donated quite a lot to charity, which is the unearned income that we get from the money in the bank, etc., over time. And we've won an awful lot of awards for in a conventional sense as well, whilst being carbon positive. So we've got the Oxygen Farm, 166 acres farm. It's our own little kind of centre parks in Scotland, in a place called Coldingham, where everybody within the business can have a week with the family just to chill out, spend a bit of time. But obviously it's huge woodland, so it creates all of the offsetting that we could ever possibly need. And that's the Yellow Shed of Wonderment, which is a rather interesting place where we all work out of. They've got 3 offices, Barnsley, East Kilbride and Bicester, and that's the Bicester office, which is a place where people, we want them to be creative, and they are creative. So on to the how, and soon you will have a question. How we do it is, the first rule that we all know in business is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. The trouble is, if you only look at the financial aspect of it, you're looking monodimensionally, and as the old adage goes, for the man with a hammer, the whole world is a nail, because you just batter that one thing. Everything else is subsidiary to that. Well, at Webmart, we don't. We measure 3 things: the intellectual, emotional, and financial return of the business. Because if you measure those 3 things at a business level, you're maximising your comparative advantage, you're enjoying it, and you're making a full return on your labour employed, because you're ensuring that you've got that balance in it. Intellectual is first, and I'll run through how we do the intellectual and measure that later. So emotional and financial, and this is powered right in the middle, those core values of trust and transparency. You get them 2 right, everything works. If you haven't got that, you're screwed, because nobody will want to work with you. So the more trustworthy you can be, the more transparent you can be, which is the easy way of doing it. It's cheaper. If you've only got one version, you don't have to keep all of those kind of different levels of information within it. At an individual level, this is what it means. So if I can be an employer that maximises what you're good at, which is the intellectual, what you love doing, emotional, and pays well, then, to be honest, you ain't going to want to go anywhere else. I've got loads of mates, and I'm sure you have too, I'm 52, who are here. Rich but bored. And they're at 52 going, oh my fucking Christ, what did I do? What did I do for the last 30 years since I got me, you know, and they're typically accountants, and they followed the professional classes that their mums and dads and whatever said that it was a very good role. And because their heart and soul wasn't in it, but they got money, they thought that that was enough. And it isn't for young people. They want the 3. And this is where, if you think of a business as a bag of people, because that's all it is. If you want to look into it, there is no such thing as a business. It's a bag of people in a place. Then by doing that, you get the best competitive advantage you can as a business. So moving on to where you sit in, just have a think. You've got 5 minutes, I think, to discuss. How do you maximise the intellectual, emotional, financial return of your employees or colleagues within your business? And how could you change it? Or how could you look at afresh at doing that as part of your value proposition to your employees or your colleagues? On you go. So this is... Oh, good to hear it. There's 2 of us. So this is, I'm running on, it's difficult because we've only got kind of 10 minutes, and I'll do quite a lot longer on this usually with them. So this is the intellectual return. These are the kind of areas, and I'm put measurements on there. Obviously, it goes back to what we were just talking about. All of these things are really important. So running through from the top, technology is massively important. Everybody's got as much screens and tech as they want because that's an enabler. It allows them to be the most productive version of them that they can be in our world. I don't know, it doesn't matter what it is. If you look at productivity gaps, we're very productive business because we use technology wherever. And tech is really difficult, and it is painful. If you ever had to deal with business analysts and software programmers, you'll realise just how painful it is. But it's so important. Every business, whether you like to think you are or not, is a tech business. Because without that, you are at a comparative disadvantage, whether you're client acquisition, retention, development, supply chain optimization, innovation. I went to one of the things where the little camper van comes into. One of the things I do is go around to see other companies. Went to BMW and asked the head of procurement what percentage of the innovation within the BMW do they reckon comes from their supply chain, and it was 80% plus supply chain. Or equally, when you get it wrong, as Volkswagen did, it can destroy quite a lot of value. So if you're wanting to engage people and to get innovation, to get the intellectual value within your organisation, you crowdsource as much as you possibly can from your suppliers, but give them as much technology as they want. They will find out to use it. It's relatively cheap relative to the brains that you're buying. Understand their life goals. So don't look at people as a unit of productivity. Understand what is.
Is there something else?
I'm sure there is. There's plenty, actually. Maximise and train people with technology. Make sure they understand that. Understanding their life goals, understanding the person behind them. One of the things that I've always said is a cap of 50 people in the business. I don't want any more than 50 people because otherwise you don't know them. You can't know them. So for me, that's really important to know, the people up and down the business, because then you can react appropriately to their life and make sure that they really do feel a sense of belonging, which is emotional, but also intellectually, if people share with you where they feel that they've got the best use of their time, then you can morph the role to that person, because there are no hard and fast barriers now to either sectors, industries or individual roles within a business. So the better fit you get for their talent, the happier they are, the better they are at doing their job. Maximise their opportunities, not problems. So don't give the best people in your organisation the biggest problems to solve, because that's underutilising them. Give them the biggest opportunities. Innovation, by definition, if you want to use the HMRC definition of it, is anything that has a high degree of uncertainty at the end. So if you want the brightest people to be dealing with those kind of things, that is how you get innovation within whatever business you're doing. If you give them problems, you know what the outcome is. Hopefully, no problem. Helps you as a leader, because you shovel your shit onto them, but it doesn't help them bringing the business forward, which is really important. Understand who you want to recruit. Most of the people that we want we want the right kind of people. We've got a very strong recruitment policy with Skype interviews for everybody to start with, psychometric, team interview, and then I'll interview them last before they come in. And then when they come in, they have a review after 3 months. Everybody anonymously ranks them for capability within their job, their ability, their spirit as a long-term Webmartier, and their attitude. They have to get through that after 3 months, and then they do the same at 6 months. So we measure their fit for the business and fit for that role before they get in. So you're crowdsourcing that validation, because that's the really important thing. Because you know quite soon after somebody, you can blag an interview, you can't blag 3 months. And if you're really good at blagging 3 months, you'll never get through 6 months, because people know people. So we have that as an anonymous thing, which people do. Mentor, more mentoring, less managing, and which goes in with this, invert the management structure. So I'm at the bottom. I'm there to support the top managers, who is an inverse of Maslow and his hierarchy of needs in a way, who are there to support the team leaders, the frontline employee team. It's difficult to see, I'm zoom in that a bit. And then, try and work out how, if I can find a mouse. Oh, it's on that screen. Right, here we are. The beauty of this kind of inverse is that you're mentoring, not managing. It's not top down, it's bottom up. So mentoring goes up, innovation comes down. Innovation is sitting in the middle between customers and clients and frontline employees. I don't know what we need to improve, they do. And there's most of them out there. So all innovation comes from frontline team, validated by the team leaders and the managers, and then gets actioned on a 2-week sprint. So every 2 weeks we are innovating and improving. And it's this interface here which is the most important one to capture, to improve your product to market, or your whatever it is that you're selling. See if I can get out again now. I'm used to touchscreens. I end up looking like a 2-year-old child pressing screens all the time these days. There we go. And then as a leader, I have what I call my DIY MBA, because I don't want to do an MBA course. I don't think they're relevant, to be brutally honest. I think they're trying to run ICI back in the 70s rather than a modern, nimble company now. So half a day a week I have time I don't, because I'm not operationally involved in everything these days, far from it. It gives me time to go out and see other people, to read about things. At the moment I'm looking at artificial intelligence and Bitcoin, the two areas, or blockchain, that I'm looking to do, and neural networks are really important to me. So I haven't got the space. Half a day every week booked in. The only thing that is static in my diary is my DIY MBA on a Tuesday morning. And that gives me the space to think, because most leaders are doing all the time. They're not thinking. They don't have the chance to, they feel they have to sell to get space back in their life to do the things that they want to do. And I said to them, all you have to do is put a diary appointment in every week and put private. Nobody move it, it stays there and it happens. And it's because there are so many things that you need to learn about these days if you're going to lead a business effectively. That getting that space in your busy working week is really, really important. Maximise the emotional return. Obviously, the things that we talked about before: trust, and give trust and empowerment to people. Make every role meaningful. Again, listening to Rosie, she was saying about having that sense of purpose is really, really important. Transparency, having one version of the truth. I do a video every week to the team, which is a 5-minute video, just explaining what's happening in the business. And how I get the narrative of what I'm doing is in my inbox. Everything comes in. If I think it's suitable for the video, as in it's something that people want to share, I just drag it into a folder called Vidcast. And I do a 5-minute video, and it's human, it's free. I'm a tight northerner. I hate spending, so all I do is I do that video wherever I am. I did Fridays, I think, in a car park in somewhere in deepest, darkest Buckinghamshire, you know. But you can then stream it. Everybody can see it at the same time. 4 o'clock on a Friday, beer o'clock. We all go out, and people can watch it whenever they want to do, and it makes it easier to communicate with everybody. Make work both fun and hard. There's no point in people getting bored, and you need to constantly challenge. So making sure that they understand what success looks like, but building fun. So every time, most companies have they have reports which are exception reports. When things go wrong, you get a report and it tells you all that. At the same time as you develop that, develop an exceptional report where it captures, with the same amount of rigour, things going right. Because those are the triggers that allow you to say thank you. Goes back to appreciation and all that stuff. But you try whenever you're in the same room as somebody to say thank you when they do that. But if you haven't got the process right, and systemically you haven't got those triggers in there, it's really difficult. Especially if I've got 3 offices. East Kilbride, I'm virtually never in, sadly. I'd love to, but it's a right nightmare for me to get to during a normal working week. Barnsley and Bicester. I can't physically see everybody to say thank you, but you can if you've got it as a thing. And so I do lots of video notes. So there's a little app called Workflow, which anybody wants to connect, you can do, and it'll just do a little video. I'll talk to camera and say thank you for that, really appreciate it. The feedback you get is fantastic, and just email it out to them. It's much better than anything else that you do, because it's human. It's that human dimension. Don't use emails. Think of emails as Facebook. You only give a thumbs up. Whenever you give a thumbs down through email, people get right upset, he says. Having done that. So I'm trying to desperately get better than only send positives through that. Anything else, either a face-to-face meeting or do a voice note, and just because then you've got the tone in it. Voice note or vid note, both of those help massively. And look at Maslow in his hierarchy of needs, and this is my role. My role is to go as far as esteem, and that's where process comes in, so that you can achieve all of those things with your process. So everybody else is spending their time up here, because that's where the comparative advantage of whatever it is that you're wanting to do. So my responsibility is to make Webmart the most enjoyable place, financially stable, you know, sharing all the money. Every time money comes in the bank, it makes a noise. We get on the big screens, we've got big screens like this through the business, showing how much has just gone into the bank, because it means that people feel secure and all that kind of stuff. And systemically, and this is where process is important, you build up, it's what you do with that process. You can do that to ensure that people get appreciation, get the opportunity, get accomplishment, and recognised, because if it's not recognised, it doesn't count, so that everybody else is being as creative a version of them as they can, because that's where the competitive advantage for your organisation and therefore their future lies. And lastly, financial. Obviously, financial is very important because the truth of the matter is, as we've seen earlier, having them at the top, having everything, is pointless and nobody cares. The truth of the matter is nobody will ever care about what you do for yourself. The only thing that matters is what you do for other people. Fact. End of. And so if you can work out how you can maximise the value, the financial value you deliver to people, then it really does turbocharge the business going forward. And bear in mind, we're a print management business now, marketing services business, print has been through cyclical and structural decline over many years and what have you. And now all of a sudden, yet we've still managed to make a profit through that. And we're looking to build now, broadening out our reach with partner suppliers to deliver full service marketing agency. And it gives people an opportunity, impetus to invest more in their training, etc., going forward. Because if you think about the top people, in a world where collaboration is most important, who's going to share with those people at the top? Because they're going to look after the number one. They don't really care. The people that people actually do care about are the ones at the bottom who do things for other people, not for their own self-aggrandizement. And if you think about competition as being destructive, which it is, and collaboration being positive, if you've got the traits of the people on the top, you will not win, because somebody will always try and do you over because you would do them over. If, however, you've got the traits on the bottom, you will always win in this world. So this is our Marxist capitalism. This is where we use capitalism to create profit and Marxist principles of redistribution of wealth to share it out. So, I'll just do a little kind of thing at the bottom. This is our distribution. We call it the SEXY scheme, the Senior Executive Incentive Scheme, and everybody within the business after 2 years is in it. So 2-year earning, we know by then they are one of us. They're a great person to have. They've shown creativity, all the right traits. At the bottom of the dotted line is the retained profits. So between 0 and 400,000 is retained profits, which is why we've got the most remarkably dull net worth as a business, which goes at a 45-degree angle, because it just goes up by that amount every year. Between 400,000 and £1 million profits, half goes to the team, half goes to me. And above £1 million, 100% of it goes to the team. So the growth of the business is entirely down to them and delivered to them, because we've got enough for the business, enough for me, and enough then for them to maximise their return for working at Webmart.
So is this the whole company?
Yeah,
different teams?
everybody. Basically, the surplus goes into a pot, and then it's the base salary of everybody's been there 2 years. One gets divided by the other, and everybody gets the same percentage of their base salary, because 20%, 80%, whatever, it means the same. Different value, but it's the same impact on people's lives. And the truth of the matter is, if you look at it in synopsis, if you want to be the most selfish person you can be, then give as much as you possibly can every day to everybody, because you will get as many people as you possibly can trying to help you forever. Every day, literally every day, I have in my inbox or messages of people giving me competitive advantage. Never asked for, but they will. They will always do it, because you've helped them, not expecting anything. So the more you give, literally, the more you get out of life on those 3 levels. And it's an amazingly powerful force to help you deliver an exceptional return for everybody who's around you. So that's Marxist capitalism. The fact of the matter is, you have a choice how you run a business. You don't have to run it like the professions say or the textbooks say. You can actually look at the big things, the kind of purposeful things, and show as an exemplar there are ways of achieving this. And as Gandhi says, as we all know, you must be the change you wish to see to be in the world. And if you look at the people who are radicals back in the day, that we now say, well, obviously these were the right things to do. But back in a contemporary way, people accepted from slavery all the way through that wrongs were just the way it is. But it does take people, and business can be that force for good if it chooses to be. So what are you waiting for? On your marks, get set, go. Thank you. So this is the last question. What change are you going to make to your little slice of heaven or work to try and show the change that business can make to improve the life of the people within your organisation and outside of it?
Okay, thank you very much.
It's all right.
That was great.